I was an expert on marriage before I got married. You see, for 47 years, I was a single man. And then I made that decision to get married. Overnight, I went from being an expert on marriage to knowing absolutely nothing about marriage. And you may remember, you were an expert on raising kids like these. You had great advice for those parents in Walmart who had that unruly 3-year-old running around the store. Great advice. And then you had a kid of your own. And overnight, you went from being an expert at raising kids to looking for the box that your kid came in so you could find the directions on how to raise it. Fellow Toastmasters friends, I had 3 people in my boat that I thought I knew. Boy, was I in for some surprises. Come join me on our fishing trip as I share with you the things I did not know. There was only one thing left to do before firing up that blue classic glass power fishing boat and heading back to the boat dock. I had to get rid of the excess bait. I grabbed the cricket container full of live crickets, and I began dumping the crickets into the lake. I dumped about half of them when I felt 2 hands gripping my forearm. It was my wife, whom I thought I knew. I said, "What are you doing?" She said, "You can't dump the crickets into the lake. It's unfair and insensitive." I said, "Excuse me?" She said, "You need to let the crickets out on the shore so it becomes their choice if they want to jump into the lake." I didn't know my wife held a doctorate degree in cricketology with a minor in the emotional makeup of insects. As we were arguing with one another over the crickets, the boat was drifting closer to the shallow mud bank, and my wife, there she is, very perceptive, decided she would take the paddle, and I thought she was going to keep us from hitting the bank. But no, she put the paddle into the water and began shooing the crickets closer to the shore. I realized that I was going to have to keep us from hitting the bank, so I reached for the other paddle with this hand, and when I did, the cricket bucket tipped over like this into the bottom of the boat, and now we have over 100 crickets in the bottom of the boat, chirping, crawling, jumping, hopping, all over the boat and all over us. By this time, the boat is now drifting even closer to the shallow mud bank, but not to fear. Dun-da-da-da! It was Zach to the rescue. On his own, my 6-year-old nephew decided he was going to get us out of this tough spot by firing up the engine. He jumps up into the front of the boat, starts to crank the ignition. Mud flies everywhere because the propeller's halfway in the mud. It's like we're going through a car wash with our windows in. The sound of the engine causes the crickets to freak out and go everywhere inside the boat. And I'm yelling at my little nephew, Zach, turn it off, turn it off. He turns it off. I grab him by the shoulder, I turn him around. I said, "Zach, bud, you can never turn on an ignition without permission." And he looked right at me, staring right at my forehead. He said, "Uncle Donny." I said, "Zach, you could have stranded us here. You could have sheared the bin." He continued looking at me like he was looking right. "Uncle Donny." I said, "Zach, I don't want to hear it right now. Get up, go to the back of the boat, and I want you to sit down." He said, "Uncle Donny." I said, "What, Zach?" He said, "You have a cricket on your eyebrow." I didn't know my little nephew possessed 2 great military traits: attention to detail and situational awareness. I didn't know my little nephew was born with first responder instincts. I got us pushed away from the bank, and now we're headed back to the boat dock when my dad decided that he was going to help. Let me paint the picture. My dad is a very large man. We brought an oversized lawn chair for him, placed it in the back of the boat. This is where my dad sat, looking out the back of the boat. My dad decided that he was going to reach out, gather some crickets, and put them back into the container. This was his contribution to the fishing trip. When all of a sudden I hear this loud shout, I turned and said, "Dad, are you all right?" He said, "My hip just popped out of socket. You can't make this stuff up. Well, you can't. This is Toastmasters, but I'm not doing this stuff. I didn't know this was the third time that my dad's hip popped out of socket. I went over to him and I got my hand and I'm trying to pop his hip back inside. I said, no, that ain't gonna work, bud, that ain't gonna work. He said, you gotta get me back to the boat dock. And I thought, okay, but I don't know what we're gonna do when we get you back there. You're too big to move and you can't move yourself. But I rushed back to the boat dock, ran up, grabbed the truck and trailer, backed it in, put the boat on the trailer with my dad still sitting in the lawn chair in back of the boat. Facing out the back end with fishing poles dangling off the back end, we looked like the Beverly Hillbillies. Imagine this, as we're coming out of Sonora, California on Highway 108 with a man sitting in the back of the boat in a launch. We've got cars going by, honk, honk, hey, you catching anything? Honk, honk, hey, how's the fishing? We got cars going by, getting even with my dad, recording him on his cell phone. It's hilarious. Until the flashing red lights. He pulled me over. I watched the highway patrolman in my side mirror. He was talking with my dad, elbows leaned over. No, he wasn't talking. He was laughing. He came up to my window, forcing back a grin. I was expecting a poker face. He leaned in and he said, "You realize there's a man back in your boat, in a lawn chair, with the hip out of socket?" He said, "Get your dad home safe." I took off driving. I didn't know that law enforcement could have such an enjoyable time at the traffic stop. I got my dad home safe. I got out of the truck, ran back. I said, "Dad, how you doing? You okay?" He was holding his hip. He said, "Son, I don't think you missed a single pothole on the entire trip." I didn't know my dad could crack a joke when he was in such pain. Fellow Toastmasters and friends, you have people in your life that you think you know. Maybe you should invite them on a fishing trip. You might discover what I did. There are some things you do not know.